Okay, everybody. So I've decided for some of you who have asked for a more formal lecture, we have a lot of cool stuff we do in class, so a lot of active learning things. So I don't necessarily want to take class time to do that, but at least for some chapters, I'm going to provide you an online lecture like this that you can look at your leisure. So today I'm talking about tissues. Obviously, not this kind of tissues, the tissues that are found in your body. So for chapter 4, there's a series of learning objectives. I've already shown these to you. These are things you should know for exams or be comfortable explaining. So tissues are not the ones you blow your nose with. They're groups of cells that are similar in structure and function. And we have 4 major types of tissues that you guys have seen in lab, at least some already. Some examples are listed on this slide. Nervous tissue. This one's pretty easy. Brain, spinal cord, and nerves. And it's one of the easier ones to recognize on a slide too, because it's chiefly made up of neurons. Then we have muscle tissue. We have 3 kinds of muscle tissue. They all contract to cause movement. We've got skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Epithelial tissues form boundaries. They form covering and protective surfaces. So they are found on your skin. They are found lining organs that absorb stuff like your GI tracts or secrete stuff. So they are basically covering and protecting tissues. And then connective tissue are tissues that connect everything together. They support, they protect, and they bind other tissues together. Some common examples are bones, tendons, adipose tissue or fat is another one. For the beginning, we'll focus on epithelial tissue or epithelium. And in class, we're going to work to figure out how to identify what kind of tissues you have in front of you when you have a picture or histology slide in front of you. So with epithelial tissue, we have glandular epithelia and we have covering and lining epithelia. Covering and lining epithelia is mostly on external and internal surfaces. So lining your lungs, lining your GI tract, your skin, your upper layers of your skin is an epithelial tissue, a covering and lining epithelia. Glandular epithelia are epithelial tissues that have developed to create glands, such as your endocrine glands, like your thyroid gland, your pituitary gland. Some other examples of glandular tissue are exocrine glands, your sweat glands. So these are a few examples. We'll get into more when we talk more in detail about glands. Epithelial tissue have some defining characteristics. They have sides to the tissue. They have a polarity. You could think of it as a top and a bottom or an upper and lower surface. So they have an apical surface. This always has a free edge, and a basal surface, which is the opposite side of the cell from the apical surface. If you're thinking about the apical surface, they can be the side that faces the interior or lumen, the open space in your intestine or your lungs, and they may have special adaptations for absorption, such as microvilli. These help with absorption of food chemicals in the intestinal lining. They can also have cilia, like in your trachea and in your lungs. These help to propel mucus and trapped bacteria out of the airways. And then we have what's called a basal lamina that's right under that basal membrane, and this is formed of glycoproteins and collagen, so mostly proteins, and it helps to anchor the epithelia to the underlying tissues. Some of the other characteristics of epithelial tissues are that they are composed of closely packed cells. So we talked a little bit about structures that hold cells together, tight junctions and desmosomes. So tight junctions help to hold cells continuously together in sheets, and desmosomes are sort of pop rivets between cells. And so epithelial tissues, when they form linings, a lot of the times they form very tight linings that may be fairly impermeable to things passing across them. So stuff that's absorbed in the gut or absorbed in the kidney usually has to pass across a cell to get absorbed. Underneath the epithelial tissue, there's a connective tissue layer, and so that supports the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue have nervous input, but they are avascular. That means they don't have a real blood supply. They get their nutrients mainly from the blood supply of the underlying connective tissue. And they have a high rate of regeneration. So you cut your skin, it heals rather fast. So how do we classify epithelia? We've gone over this a bit in class. You can look at it and see how many layers of cells are there. If there's one, it's a simple epithelium, no matter what the shape of the cell. If there's more than one, it's a stratified epithelia. So if there's layers of cells, it's a stratified epithelium. Here's an example. You've got simple, just one layer of cells, stratified, several layers of cells. Apical surface, right here, basal surface, right here. Has to do with this side of the cell that faces the open area, this side of the cell that faces the underlying connective tissue. We have different shapes that also classify epithelial tissue: squamous, cuboidal, columnar. If stratified, we name them according to that apical layer of cells. So what do those apical layer of cells look like? So squamous are usually flat. Cuboidal are somewhat square shaped, although they can be a lot of the times rounded on the edge. They are just usually they can be wider than they are tall. Columnar, they're much taller than they are wide, so they look like long columns. So when we talk about different kinds of epithelia, you want to be aware of where they are in the body, their location, how you describe them. So are they simple squamous? Are they stratified squamous? And what their functions are. So simple squamous epithelium, our picture here is of a slice of an air sac of the lung, and this is basically a slice if you're looking at your lung, it's a slice this way, and what you can see is these sacs are cut in half, or they're cut vertically, so that you can see there's just one layer of cells right here, just one layer of cells between each sac. So simple squamous epithelia are a single layer of flattened cells, and they're the simplest type of epithelia. They allow passage of materials by diffusion and filtration, and they can secrete lubricating substances in serosal membranes. So here's the air. This is the wall of the alveolar sacs in the lung, and you can see some other examples in this slide as well. Two other important locations of simple squamous tissues or simple squamous epithelia are the endothelium. This is the continuous lining of blood vessels. It's also found in lymphatic vessels and the heart. It's this smooth layer on the very inside of these vessels. And the simple squamous is also found in mesothelium, and this is the serous membranes, the epithelium of the serous membranes in the ventral body cavity. So the membranes that surround your guts.